Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when something deep within us senses that change is coming. Not the kind of change that fades with time, but the kind that reshapes our direction, renews our purpose, and alters our future in ways we could never fully predict. God, in His faithfulness, often prepares us before He transforms us. He does not act randomly or carelessly. When He is about to change your life forever, there are signs, quiet, powerful indicators that He is at work behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, shaping your character, and drawing you closer to His will. One of the first signs is a growing discomfort with the way things have always been. What once felt acceptable now feels heavy, restless, and unfulfilling. This discomfort is not meant to discourage you, it is meant to awaken you. God often uses dissatisfaction to loosen our grip on the familiar. When He is preparing to move you forward, He will not allow you to stay comfortable in places that no longer fit your calling. That inner unrest is His gentle reminder that you were created for more than routine survival. He is stirring your heart so you will be willing to let go of what is safe in order to receive what is right. Another sign is the closing of doors you prayed would stay open. This can be confusing and even painful. You may have invested time, energy, and hope into something that suddenly comes to an end. Yet God's closed doors are often greater acts of protection than His open ones. When He shuts a door, it is never to punish you, but to redirect you. He sees what you cannot see, the outcomes, the consequences, the hidden dangers. A closed door is God saying, "Trust me enough to follow where I am leading, not where you are comfortable going." These moments test our faith, but they also strengthen it because they require us to rely not on our understanding, but on His wisdom. A third sign is a season of waiting that seems longer than you expected. Waiting is one of God's most powerful tools. In the waiting, He refines our motives, deepens our faith, and teaches us obedience. While we often ask God to change our circumstances, He is more concerned with changing our hearts. If God is silent, it does not mean He is absent. He may be preparing you for a blessing that requires greater spiritual maturity than you currently possess. Waiting stretches our patience, humbles our pride, and trains us to listen more closely to His voice. What feels like delay is often divine preparation. You may also notice an increased awareness of God's presence in your daily life. Scriptures speak to you in new ways. Conversations seem timely and meaningful. Small moments carry deep spiritual weight. When God is about to change your life, He draws you closer to Himself because the transformation He is bringing will require intimacy with Him. He does not want you to simply receive His blessings. He wants you to know His heart. This renewed closeness is His invitation to trust Him more fully, to seek Him not just for answers, but for guidance, strength, and peace. Another powerful sign is a testing of your faith through challenges you did not choose. Trials often appear just before breakthroughs. These challenges reveal what we truly believe about God. Do we trust Him only when life is easy? Or do we trust Him when the path is uncertain? God allows these tests not to break us, but to build us. He uses adversity to strip away self-reliance and replace it with dependence on Him. Through these trials, He prepares us to handle the responsibility and impact of the change He is bringing you. You may also experience a shift in your priorities. Things that once seemed important begin to lose their appeal, while spiritual matters gain significance. This shift is evidence of God realigning your heart with His purposes. He is teaching you to value eternal things over temporary ones. When God changes your priorities, He is changing your direction. This realignment ensures that when the transformation comes, you will use it not for selfish gain, but for meaningful, lasting impact. Another sign is an increase in opposition or resistance. When you begin to move closer to God's will, obstacles often appear. This resistance is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. Often it is confirmation that you are on the right one. Growth invites challenge. Transformation requires courage. God uses resistance to strengthen your resolve and deepen your trust in Him. Through opposition, you learn perseverance, and through perseverance, your faith becomes unshakable. Finally, there is a deep sense of hope that remains even in uncertainty. Circumstances may be unclear, and answers may be incomplete, but there is a quiet confidence within you that God is at work. This hope is not based on what you see, but on who God is. It is the assurance that He is faithful, that He keeps His promises, and that His plans for you are good. When this hope anchors your soul, you can move forward with peace, even without knowing every step. Ladies and gentlemen, God never changes a life carelessly. Every transformation He brings is purposeful, loving, and rooted in His perfect wisdom. When you recognize these signs, respond with faith, obedience, and patience. Trust that the same God who is stirring your heart, closing doors, testing your faith, and drawing you closer to Himself is also preparing a future beyond what you can imagine. God often begins His greatest work in our lives by allowing a sense of discomfort to rise within us. This restlessness is not accidental, and it is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a holy disturbance, a quiet signal that the season you are in can no longer contain the purpose God is preparing to release. What once felt satisfying begins to feel empty. What once seemed secure now feels limiting. You may find yourself questioning routines you never questioned before, wondering why familiar paths no longer bring peace. This is not ingratitude, it is invitation. God is gently awakening you to the truth that you are not created to remain where you are forever. Many people mistake discomfort for failure, but in God's design, discomfort is often evidence of growth. When a child outgrows a garment, the tightness is not a problem with the garment, it is proof the child has grown. In the same way, when your spirit begins to feel confined by places, habits, relationships, or roles that once fit, it may be because God has expanded your capacity. He is preparing you for something greater, something that requires more faith, more obedience, and more trust than your current season demands. God uses dissatisfaction to loosen our attachment to comfort. Comfort has a subtle way of convincing us that where we are is good enough, even when it is far below what God intends. We settle not because we are content, but because change feels risky. So God allows restlessness to interrupt our peace, not to disturb us, but to move us. This inner unease pushes us to ask deeper questions about purpose, direction, and obedience. It challenges us to examine whether we are living by habit or by calling. This discomfort often shows up quietly. It may appear as a lack of joy in things you once loved, or a growing awareness that you are functioning but not fulfilled. You may still be productive, responsible, and outwardly successful, yet inwardly aware that something is missing. God does not reveal everything at once. Instead, He stirs the heart first. He allows dissatisfaction to surface so that you begin to seek Him more intentionally. Without this stirring, we would rarely ask God to change us, because familiarity feels safer than transformation. What makes this discomfort holy is that it does not push you toward despair, but toward God. It creates a longing, not just for change, but for meaning. You begin to desire alignment rather than ease, purpose rather than applause. This is where spiritual growth begins. God is shifting your appetite. He is teaching you that comfort is not the same as peace, and stability is not the same as obedience. At times, this restlessness may cause fear. You may wonder why God is allowing you to feel unsettled when you have prayed for peace. But peace does not always mean stillness. Sometimes peace comes from knowing that God is moving you even when the movement feels uncomfortable. Just as a farmer disturbs the soil before planting new seed, God disrupts our comfort to prepare the ground of our hearts for new life. It is important to understand that this dissatisfaction is not meant to be ignored or numbed. Many people try to silence it by staying busy, distracting themselves, or convincing themselves that nothing needs to change. But ignoring this signal delays growth. God speaks softly through restlessness. And when we listen, we discover that He is not taking something away without planning to replace it with something better. This inner discomfort also reveals trust issues. Letting go of what is familiar requires faith. God often exposes our attachment to security so that we learn to depend on Him rather than circumstances. When He begins to shift your heart, He is asking you to trust His guidance more than your comfort. He wants you to walk by faith, not by familiarity. As this restlessness grows, you may feel torn between staying where you are and stepping into the unknown. This tension is part of the process. God does not rush it because clarity comes through obedience, not convenience. Each moment of discomfort is shaping your willingness to move when He says move. It is preparing you to release, control, and follow His leading, even when the destination is not yet clear. When you recognize this sign, the question is not how to escape the discomfort, but how to respond to it. God is not asking you to panic or force change prematurely. He is inviting you to seek Him, to listen, and to allow Him to reveal the next step in His timing. This restlessness is proof that He is not finished with you, that He is still shaping your story, and that the place you are standing in now is not where your journey ends. There are moments when God answers our prayers in ways we did not expect, and one of the most challenging ways He does this is by closing doors we hoped would remain open. We pray, plan, invest our time and energy, and then suddenly the opportunity ends, the relationship shifts, or the path we were certain about comes to a halt. In those moments, disappointment can feel overwhelming and confusion can settle in quickly. Yet when God is preparing to change your life, closed doors are often one of His clearest signs of direction, not rejection. It is natural to assume that an open door always means God's approval and a closed door means failure. But God sees beyond the present moment. He understands outcomes, consequences, and future challenges we cannot foresee. When He closes a door, He is exercising His wisdom on your behalf. What feels like loss may actually be protection. God may be shielding you from relationships that would drain your purpose, opportunities that would distract you from your calling, or environments that would slowly pull you away from His will. Closed doors test our trust. They confront us with a choice: will we rely on our understanding, or will we trust God's guidance even when it contradicts our desires? Often, we ask God to bless plans we have already made, rather than seeking His will before moving forward. When He interrupts those plans, it can feel like resistance. But God's redirection is an act of love. He cares too much about your future to allow you to walk confidently into something that is not aligned with His purpose. There are times when a door closes after you have done everything right. You prayed, you waited, you acted with integrity, and still the outcome was not what you expected. This can be especially difficult because it challenges the belief that obedience always leads to immediate reward. But God's faithfulness is not measured by short-term outcomes. He may be closing a door not because you failed, but because He is about to lead you somewhere greater than you imagined. Closed doors also reveal where we have placed our hope. When something ends, the pain often exposes how deeply our identity or security was tied to that thing. God uses these moments to gently remind us that our foundation must be in Him, not in opportunities, people, or positions. When He removes what we rely on too heavily, He is inviting us to trust Him more fully. This process can be uncomfortable, but it leads to deeper faith and lasting peace. Sometimes a closed door forces us to pause when we would rather rush ahead. In the stillness that follows, God speaks. Without the noise of busyness and expectation, we become more attentive to His voice. He uses the pause to realign our priorities, adjust our motives, and correct our direction. What feels like an interruption is often a divine appointment with clarity, a truth. It is also important to recognize that closed doors often come before open ones. God rarely reveals the next step until we release the previous one. He asks us to walk by faith, not by sight. Letting go without knowing what comes next requires courage. Yet this is where spiritual growth deepens. Faith matures when we trust God without seeing the full picture, believing that His plan is unfolding even when we cannot yet recognize it. Resistance and disappointment can tempt us to reopen doors God has closed. We may try to force situations, manipulate outcomes, or return to what is familiar simply because it feels safe. But forcing a door open that God has shut leads to unnecessary struggle. God's direction is accompanied by His peace, even when the path is challenging. When we learn to accept His no, we make room for His yes, which often comes in ways far better than we could have planned. As painful as closed doors can be, they are not signs of abandonment. God does not close doors and leave us stranded. He remains present, guiding each step, even in uncertainty. His timing is intentional, and His purposes are good. When He closes a door, He is not ending your story. He is protecting it, redirecting it, and preparing it for something new that aligns more closely with who He created you to be. There are seasons in life when waiting feels heavier than action, when days stretch into months, and prayers seem to echo without immediate response. This waiting can be deeply unsettling, especially when you believe God was about to move quickly. Yet waiting is not wasted time in God's plan. When He is preparing to change your life, He often places you in a season where progress is not visible, but preparation is constant. In these moments, God is working beneath the surface, shaping what cannot yet be seen. Waiting exposes our expectations. We often want God to act according to our timeline, assuming that urgency on our part requires immediacy on His. But God operates with eternal perspective. He knows not only where you are going, but who you must become to get there. The waiting season slows us down so that our character can catch up with our destiny. Without this process, sudden change could overwhelm us or lead us away from God rather than closer to Him. In waiting, God teaches dependence. When answers are delayed, we are forced to rely on Him daily instead of leaning on outcomes. This is where faith matures. Trust that is based on results is fragile, but trust that is rooted in God's character is unshakable. Waiting strips away the illusion of control and reminds us that God alone is sovereign. It teaches us to pray with humility, to listen more than we speak, and to surrender rather than demand. Silence from God can feel confusing, but silence does not mean absence. Just as a teacher may remain quiet during a test to observe what the student has learned, God may allow silence to reveal the depth of our faith. He watches how we respond when there is no immediate reassurance. Do we remain faithful when emotions fluctuate? Do we continue to obey when understanding is incomplete? These moments refine our trust and strengthen our spiritual endurance. Waiting also exposes hidden motives. When progress stalls, we are confronted with the reasons behind our desires. Are we seeking God's will? Are we seeking personal comfort, recognition, or security? God uses waiting to purify our intentions so that when the answer comes, it aligns with His purpose rather than our pride. This refinement protects us from misusing blessings or allowing success to distance us from Him. During waiting seasons, God often calls us to obedience in small, seemingly insignificant ways. He may ask us to serve quietly, to forgive without acknowledgement, or to remain faithful in routines that feel unrewarding. These acts of obedience are building blocks for future responsibility. God is far more concerned with faithfulness than visibility. What feels small in the waiting season is often preparation for greater impact later. Patience is not passive. Waiting does not mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things without immediate reward. It means continuing to pray, to grow, and to trust, even when emotions waver. God develops spiritual discipline in the waiting, teaching us to walk by conviction rather than feeling. This discipline becomes a source of strength when life changes suddenly, because it grounds us in truth rather than circumstance. Waiting also creates sensitivity to God's voice. When external activity slows, internal awareness grows. We begin to notice subtle guidance, gentle nudges, and timely reminders of God's faithfulness. These quiet instructions prepare us to respond quickly and obediently when the time comes to move forward. God trains us in listening before He calls us into action. It is easy to interpret waiting as punishment or neglect, but God's love is not measured by speed. Some of His greatest work is done in hidden seasons where no one else sees progress. Just as roots grow deep underground before a tree grows tall, God strengthens us internally before He elevates us externally. The waiting season is not delaying your purpose, it is securing it. As time passes, waiting builds endurance. You learn to stand firm when circumstances are uncertain. You learn to trust God even when prayers remain unanswered. This endurance prepares you for lasting change rather than temporary success. When God finally moves, you are not just ready to receive the blessing, you are prepared to steward it wisely and faithfully. Waiting is not God's way of saying no. It is often His way of saying not yet. He sees the full picture and knows the perfect moment when everything aligns. What feels like delay is divine timing at work, shaping your faith, refining your character, and preparing your heart for the transformation that is ahead. There are times when life becomes unexpectedly difficult, just as you sense that something new is ahead. Challenges arise that you did not ask for. Resistance increases, and obstacles seem to multiply without warning. It can feel confusing, even discouraging, to face hardship when you've been trying to walk faithfully. Yet these trials are often one of the clearest signs that God is preparing you for significant change. Difficulty does not always mean you are off course. In many cases, it means you are being strengthened for what lies ahead. God uses trials to reveal the depth of our faith. When everything is comfortable, trust comes easily. But when circumstances become uncertain, faith is tested. In these moments, God is not trying to make life harder. He is showing you what your faith is built upon. Trials expose whether your confidence rests in God's character or in favorable outcomes. This revelation is necessary because lasting change requires unshakable faith, not faith that depends on convenience. Resistance often appears when growth is taking place. Just as muscles grow through tension, spiritual strength develops through opposition. God allows pressure to shape endurance, patience, and perseverance. Without resistance, faith remains shallow. Through trials, God teaches you to stand firm, to remain faithful even when answers are delayed, and to trust Him when emotions fluctuate. This strength cannot be learned through comfort alone. Trials also strip away self-reliance. When situations exceed your ability to manage them, you are reminded of your dependence on God. Pride quietly fades as humility grows. You learn to pray with sincerity, to seek guidance instead of control, and to rely on God's strength rather than your own. This dependence is essential because the change God is bringing will require a deeper level of trust than you have needed before. Many people become discouraged during trials because they expect faithfulness to remove hardship. But God never promised a life without difficulty. He promised His presence through it. Trials are not evidence of abandonment. They are opportunities for intimacy. In moments of weakness, God draws closer. He speaks comfort, offers strength, and reassures you of his